The mindset of terrorists hasn't really changed over decades, but the access to information, the access to means, has allowed it to spread a lot more and to create a spillover effect in many areas. The biggest challenge fighting terrorism is for people to understand it's no longer just an us versus them mentality. You can't just solve that problem with using mainly police or mainly military. You have to use every resources available that complement each other. That means versatility, and it also means to use them simultaneously. So you can have a proper military campaign, for example, which is a classic case. But if you don't have a proper civilian and social campaign to go along with it to compensate for the needs, then you have a poor strategy. I love the example of Burkina Faso. There was a military operation that kicked out terrorists in a particular area. But the problem was they had no backup plan where terrorists, villagers and those living there could have access again to resources to eat, to sustain their needs, and they had to turn back to organized crime, which also involves terrorism, to get the water, to get the supplies they needed. So the military operation was a success technically for the short term, but because it wasn't complemented, it was a failure because it wasn't adapted. The thing is, you can have that great plan, but if you also don't understand the particularities of that area, where somebody from that area can explain, well, you need to present, for example, the resupply patterns in a special way, rather than just come with a bulk idea, then it's not going to work. Since 2015, the numbers have shown that there's just as many extremists within the refugee flows as there are in the given population, which is about 0.04%. Are the refugee streams per se a heightened risk for European societies or Western societies? I say not really, but the management and the interpretation of how it's presented, it is, because real consequences of it has been, for example, an increase, I think a 300 or 400% increase in attacks and far-right attacks on refugee camps, on foreigners, on Muslims, because it's presented, is it a danger? Oh, if we're threatened, how do we react to this? And it provides fuel for people who feel scared. There's nothing worse than fear, right? If it happens elsewhere as part of a civil war, Syria, Mali, people will tend to see it as a military conflict or a local conflict. So the interpretation of that person fighting them there will be dictated by military interpretation of the conflict. Whereas an attack in Europe, for example, then will fall into a police, more of a judicial aspect of counterterrorism. But the mentality is in fact the same. That's where we fail to understand that some of the lessons learned on the battlefield in conflict areas actually apply to what we experience here. And there's a reason why people that are here, if they can't go to the battlefield, will try to have these attacks here. From the security side, we fail to understand that it's actually the same behavioral pattern, it's the same mindset, and we tend to go, well, that's a military aspect, so we don't want to hear about it, it's something else. Oh, when it's in Europe, then we need to deal with in a police way that's very strong, or maybe we need civilian programs that can help out, but that's something else. So instead of understanding that one feeds off the other.